Another week, another controversial statement.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
Last week, President Trump suggested the notion of relocating Palestinians from Gaza, as well as a long-term ownership of the Gaza Strip for the United States.
We'll own it.
Well, if history has taught us anything, it's that when foreign powers step in to fix the Middle East, outcomes are often mixed, to say the least.
To all the men and women of the United States Armed Forces now in the Middle East, the peace of a troubled world and the hopes of an oppressed people now depend on you.
But before we dive into today's complexities, let's roll back the clock, way back. Because this conflict isn't just about the past few years, or even decades. It's about a land that's been fought over for thousands of years. This tiny strip of land, known historically as Canaan, Judea, and later Palestine, has been conquered more times than an unlucky chessboard. The Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans all took their turn ruling over it. After the Romans crushed a Jewish revolt in 70 CE, they renamed it Palestina, partly in what some historians suggest was an attempt to diminish Jewish connections to the land. For centuries, the land experienced shifts between Christian and Muslim rulers, particularly during the Crusades. Then came the Ottoman Empire, which ruled the area from 1517 to 1917. That's 400 years of relative stability, until World War I. Enter Britain and France, key players in the historical reshaping of the Middle East. In 1917, amidst World War I, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, expressing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This declaration was made without consulting the existing Arab population, who constituted the majority in the region. Adding another layer of complexity, during the same period, Britain had also engaged in correspondence with Arab leaders, such as the Hussein-McMahon letters. Arabs understood these communications as promises of an independent Arab state in exchange for their help in fighting the Ottoman Empire. However, the precise nature and extent of these promises are still debated by historians, and ultimately, a full independent unified Arab state, as envisioned by some Arab leaders, did not materialize in the way they expected after the war. By the 1930s, tensions were escalating rapidly. Palestinian Arabs with deep roots in the land increasingly opposed land sales to growing numbers of Jewish immigrants, many fleeing persecution in Europe. Jewish immigrants, on the other hand, driven by historical and religious ties and seeking refuge, viewed Palestine as their rightful homeland. This clash of perspectives fueled increasing unrest and violence. After World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust, the international community grappled with the question of Palestine. The UN proposed a partition plan in 1947 to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international administration. While the UN partition plan was officially accepted by Jewish leadership, it was rejected by the Arab leadership. This rejection reflected a range of concerns and perspectives within the Arab community. When Israel declared independence in 1948, war erupted immediately as armies from neighboring Arab states intervened. Israel prevailed in this war, but in the ensuing conflict and its aftermath, approximately 750,000 Palestinian Arabs were displaced from their homes and land. This mass displacement is known by Palestinians as Nakba, meaning the catastrophe, and remains a deeply significant and traumatic event in Palestinian history. This period marked a critical turning point. Palestinians experienced a profound loss and displacement. Israel expanded beyond the UN partition lines, and the region entered a protracted cycle of conflict and displacement. 1956, the Suez Crisis. Israel, along with Britain and France, attacked Egypt over control of the Suez Canal. International pressure, notably from the US, led to their withdrawal. 1967, the Six-Day War. In a swift military victory, Israel captured Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. This war resulted in the expansion of Israeli control and the beginning of long-term Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories. 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. While initially successful, Israel pushed back. This war, despite ending in a military stalemate, paved the way for future peace negotiations between Israel and Egypt. 1987, the First Intifada. Palestinians in the occupied territories initiated a widespread uprising against Israeli occupation, characterized by protests and civil disobedience. This contributed to the rise of a militant terrorist organization known as Hamas. 1993, the Oslo Accords. These agreements between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, offered a framework for a two-state solution and Palestinian self-governance. While celebrated as a breakthrough at the time, the Oslo process ultimately faltered, failing to resolve critical issues like final borders, Jerusalem, refugees, and settlements. 2000 to 2005, the Second Intifada. Unlike the First Intifada, this uprising was highly militarized, with Palestinian groups launching suicide bombings and attacks on Israeli civilians, and Israel responding with large-scale military operations, assassinations of militant leaders, and the construction of the separation barrier. The conflict caused thousands of deaths, primarily of the Palestinian people, shattering hopes for peace. The conflict came to an end in 2005 after a ceasefire agreement and Israel's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. 2007, control of Gaza. In 2007, Hamas gained power in Gaza, creating a political division with the Palestinian Authority governing the West Bank. In response, Israel imposed a blockade on Gaza, citing security concerns. Since then, the region has witnessed recurring cycles of conflict, including rocket fire from Gaza and heightened Israeli military response. October 7, 2023, attack on the Nova Music Festival. Hamas launched a large-scale attack on Israel, breaching the Gaza security fence using explosives, vehicles, and paragliders, while firing thousands of rockets. Around 1,500 Hamas militants assaulted Israeli towns and military bases, killing over 1,300 civilians and taking more than 200 hostages. Some of the most horrifying violence occurred at the Nova Music Festival, where gunmen massacred at least 260 attendees, many of whom were attempting to flee. Israeli forces engaged in prolonged battles to regain control of towns and rescue hostages, discovering evidence of severe brutality, including assaults on civilians in their homes. The attack marked one of the deadliest days in Israel's history and triggered the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Today, in 2025, the conflict continues with no clear resolution in sight. Ongoing military actions, discussion around potential large-scale displacement, and deep divisions within the region contribute to a highly volatile situation. So what do you think? Will U.S. involvement in Gaza bring stability? Is a lasting peace even achievable? Or is the region destined to repeat its cycles of brutal conflict? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found the video informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Thank you, and until next time.